Okay, welcome back, fellow missionaries, for yet another installment on our little mini webinar series, Different Funders. And at this time, what we'll deal with are mega foundations. But in between the filming of our last segment on government and on the mega foundations, guess what happened? The books arrived. This is the English language version right here. Hot off the press, was just delivered. So the boxes are being stacked up in the office right now. And just want to let you know. So that's very, very good news. The Spanish and French are at the press, and these are in our hands now. And so one addition I wanted to make to last week, where we talked about, the governments, is the fact that we have a whole appendix of resources. It begins on like page 456 of the book, but it talks about embassies and project support. And what we actually have for you, when you can see it, we list a number of embassies already: Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Germany, and the like. And they're the ones that would tend to have a little bit more resources to share with folks like yourself. So that's a good resource. It'll take you right to it, and it'll give you some ideas. Now today, under Mega Foundations, that's also listed. In fact, it is it's Appendix A in the 10th edition. So we start off with the top 10, but then we also list the top 100. So the list is right there for you. There are other bigger ones that you may find, but you'll certainly notice some of the names here. So what do we want to pay attention to with mega foundations? Probably the biggest thing that I want is just for you all to be aware of them. When you have time to find out what they care about, and when you find out where there's overlap, because you never know where it might impact you. Now, generally speaking, I'm telling you what you already know, but these mega foundations give big money for big needs and problems. They, for example, they want to conquer AIDS. They want to conquer malaria. Occasionally, they'll pick out even an issue like Catholic Sisters. The Conrad N. Hilton Foundation has dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars to the promotion of Catholic Sisters. That is absolutely rare to see a mega foundation completely dedicated to something that specific in our Catholic missionary universe. But there you have it. They do that. But a lot of times they look on very big issues having to do with access to education, a variety of issues in healthcare. We just talked about a few of them. But generally speaking, the grantees need to have big capacity. And as individual missionaries, we rarely have that because we're in one particular mission area dealing with the population at hand. And they tend to be smaller projects. So I would say you look at the possibility of what's called a derivative grant. And we talk about it and explain it in the book as well. But a derivative grant, from the root word, it's derived from other grants. So here's an example of how an AIDS hospice in Zambia received a fairly large grant with actually without specifically applying for it from the foundation that gave the money in the first place. The Gates Foundation wanted to deal with AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. Gates then contacted a large NGO, Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders was then in partnership with a lot of other organizations. One of them is Catholic Relief Services. And then Catholic Relief Services was aware of this hospice, which dealt with dying patients in Lusaka, and was able to put them on their radar when they made that aware to Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders was able to confirm that it was within the scope of the grant that the Gates Foundations gave to them. So actually, the Gates Foundation money ended up at this relatively small hospice in Lusaka. But it came via first Doctors Without Borders and then Catholic Relief Services. So I asterisk here, it's good to know how these mega foundations are active in your country. In this case, it really rather happened by accident. But if if the hospice had known about it, they could have made CRS aware, and in this case, CRS was aware, and then made Doctors Without Borders aware, and then they were able to get permission to use the Gates Foundation money for that. So I also say it's good to know what they're doing, but it's also good to be known. And that goes back to, I will talk about this towards the end of the series, but your whole communication strategy, wherever and whenever possible, via the internet, via whatever groups that you have, via whatever publications you have, to spread the word about what you're doing. You never know when it's going to hit the right person and help fill a need. So that's it on mega foundations. I don't want to make too much of them, because as missionaries will probably seldom have a chance to apply directly. But there may be opportunities down the road because they're clearly supporting the things that you do in healthcare, in education, in human rights, around issues around migrants, refugees, homeless, and the like. They do care. You've got to try to find the connection between the downstream partners that they're funding. So that's it for mega foundations. And now we'll move on to what I would call bonus funders. You know, we've gone through a lot, and this book will list them all. But, bonus funders to be aware of. I talk about other congregations. We list a few congregations in the book. They usually tend to support only members of their congregations around the world. But I do believe you're going to see more and more where congregations are using some of the money that they have as their numbers go down. So if we played out, this line is for time. If you go out in time, congregations are going to have, many Catholic congregations are going to have fewer members. And I'm specifically referring to congregations and their North American and European populations. And because of that, they're going to have reduced expenses, which will give them more money available. So we specifically had one congregation of sisters here in the United States that is literally planning on, quote, going out of business, if you will. They're down now to less than 100 members. They believe in the next 10 to 15 years, it will be just a handful. And so they have set aside funds. It's acting like a foundation. And they say, we want to be co-missionaries with those congregations of sisters, priests, and brothers who are in the countries that we used to be in, but we can't be in now. And they actually have processes like that. I think you will see more of them, but keep your eyes and ears open for that with other congregations. In-kind gifts. There are some fairly large operations out there that may not be able to write direct grants, but can give you other items that you care about. Feed My Starving Children is an operation out of Minnesota in the United States that literally gives with each shipment. Its starting amount is about 260,000 meals. It was specifically designed for people on the higher end of the malnutrition scale, and they have a very long shelf life. So if you can afford and work it out to get the shipment to your country, it's a very meaningful impact. Catholic Medical Mission Board, they make shipments for missionaries in the United States and Europe that are going in country. They'll give you medicines that you can use to take to the people there. In some instances, they may ship. They often have in-country representatives too, but they have become very successful at working with the large pharmaceutical companies to get humanitarian amounts of medicines that are particularly important and maybe otherwise unavailable in the countries where you're at. Food for the Poor. They're one of the largest NGOs in the world, period. And their support all around the world is very, very significant. None of these will probably make direct grants of cash, but if you have the network, you can do great work working with them. I would say this, it doesn't really maybe help you to know this, but there are many, many small family foundations that we are unable to find and put in this book. And even when we do find them, they ask that we don't list them in the book. Because they have smaller amounts of money to give away right now, they feel that they would be absolutely inundated by grant requests. So they tend to operate on a friend-to-friend or personal connection basis. But they are out there, and I want you to be aware of that. And I believe those will increase over time, and hopefully they increase in size over time such that they're then willing to be put in our book. But we're aware where we can be of that, and we do continue to try to find ways to put some of those in there. And then finally, this book does have operations partners. That is to say, you will find agencies listed in here that work on transport, they work on travel. Believe it or not, there are a couple that are dedicated just to finding discounted airfares for missionaries. So they're in there as well. There's a number that provide technical support, financial management, agriculture support, and advice. A lot of this would be what you would otherwise maybe pay several $1,000s for a consultant. They offer either with people in the field or connected via Zoom calls and other communication methods, real genuine value and real qualified value in terms of real engineers, doctors, agronomists, people that will give you very significant advice. All of those will be listed in here. You've just got to spend the time with the book itself. So that's it for what I call the bonus funders, with one addition, and that would be there's a whole section here dedicated to mass stipends. That for missionaries and those priests that are willing to become a part of those mission co-op programs or mass programs, look at the end in the appendix and you will find those resources as well. And so that concludes the bonus funders, and we have just one section left that we'll cover, and that's our tutorial on GuideStar. Thanks for joining this session.